This is Advent 1, which means we sang a Christmas carol, and we're going to amp those or ramp those up in the next few weeks. But one of my favorite Christmas carols or Christmas hymns is the song, "O Holy Night." And you need to understand that I like it for a number of reasons. I'm going to give you the reasons real quick. Number one is it fits my voice. I don't know if you know this. If you've not sung out loud or publicly much, you know that there's some songs just don't work for your voice. I mean, you'll try to sing them and you'll sound like you're a frog or something, you know. It reminds me when Robbie and I were dating and I was trying to trick her into marrying me. I was living in Portland at the time, and my roommate his name was Sam Buckingham. And he came from a long line of musicians, and he had this old Martin. Honestly, it was an old campfire Martin that was worth thousands of dollars. I learned how to play on his guitar, and he showed me a chord progression that I thought was super cool. And it was a little beyond my ability at the time, but he showed it to me, and I worked, and I had this chord progression down, and I wrote a song for Robbie with that chord progression. And I don't remember the words. I know it's written down somewhere, but the title of the song was Robbie, Oh Robbie. Some real creativity there, just so you know. And the one thing I didn't know, because I was really beginning to play guitar, I didn't know how it worked, but I didn't actually realize you could change keys. So I wrote the song in the key of the chord progression that Sam Buckingham gave me. And I'll give you the first line. Here it is. This is the way it sounded, because I put it on a cassette tape, and I mailed it to Robbie. Yeah. Anyway, it went like this. Robbie! Oh, Robbie! And then it just went downhill from there. I learned later that I could actually drop it down into a range that my voice would fit, but not that time. And we probably have a cassette tape of that at some point. We'll dig it out, and I'll never share it with you. But then there are songs that do fit your voice, and even though they don't come off necessarily awesome, they just feel easier to sing. And this song is one of those. This hymn is one of those. And please, I am not saying that I need to go on the road singing this hymn. All of us have our limitations. Nevertheless, this song feels cool to sing with my voice. That's one. Another one is that there's something about the cadence or the drive that this song carries with it, at least for me. It's a song with some push. It's a song with some robust feeling or gusto to it. It feels like someone actually believed something when they wrote it. That's not always the case. The other reason, though, is its lyrical content. The song again, O Holy Night, in one line goes, "Long lay the world in sin and error pining." That line is such a powerful theological line in this song. Now, it was written almost 200 years ago, so there's words in that line that we don't necessarily use all that often. So this is what I want you to do, just for, you don't have long, but I want you to paraphrase that line. Here it is again. Long lay the world in sin and error pining. Will you turn towards somebody near you and explain to them what that means in your words? And if you don't know, listen to what they say. Go. Try it. There's the question right up here. If you could paraphrase it, that line, how would you make it clear to someone in 2024? Long lay the world in sin and error pining. All right. Does someone want to retranslate it for the rest of the room? Take a chance. What does that mean? What does it mean in error pining? Yeah, Luke. Yeah, good. Okay, someone want to help Luke interpret this line? No, that's good. That's good. What's that? Yeah, longing, pining, like he pined. I pined for Robbie when I wrote that song, right? You've heard that, the word pined for something, I hope. By the way, I'm still kind of shaking from singing that song out loud. I mean, like I'm up here going, oh gosh, I did it. And so I'm trying to get my wits back about me right now, but if you saw my hands, I'm like, that was so weird to sing. Sorry. Yeah, the Robbie one. I'm like quaking up here. I'm sorry. I can speak in front of 5,000 people, but singing that song in front of this crew, kind of weird. Okay, so the line in this song, the hymn, long lay the world in sin and error pining, longing for the error, hunting after something that's not correct. Another way to describe the emotional appeal of this song is in the term weariness. Here's another line. The thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, right? There's a weariness in the world, and I'm going to be honest with you. I feel that at a very deep level. I feel weary. I am concerned about the level of weariness that I carry with me. The present moment we exist in is troubled and exhausted. And honestly, I am so tired. I'm so tired of the division and the insults and all the different things, the vitriol in our world. Every morning I wake up and I read the news and I grieve. I am in no way feeling like giving up. Okay, that's a little bit of a lie. Sometimes I feel like giving up. But I'm not. But I am tired. There is something going on that challenges my inside personally and nationally and globally. Every morning I pray for peace in Ukraine. Every morning I pray for peace in Gaza. Every morning I pray that some semblance of human decency and honesty would captivate our political arena. I live among people who suffer hardship, people experiencing debilitating isolation, who are enduring potentially life-threatening sickness, people who are experiencing staggering loss. I live among a people who unknowingly echo the hymn, long lay the world in sin and error pining. We live in a world that strangely pines after things that can only end up empty, that can only end up vacant. There's no other conclusion or summary to the story. Sometimes the only sensible thing I can come up with, the only honest thing I can come up with in response to that is this: lament. Say lament. It's such an interesting thing. N.T. Wright put it this way: sometimes there's no answer but lament. A much needed corrective in our culture that imagines everything is figure-outable if we just have the right mindset or manifest the right thing. There's an inevitable emotional collision that happens when things go bad, whether it's a severe illness or permanent estrangement or a conflict with a close friend or someone who has authority who does something unjust towards you. You just feel like you're ripped off. Like this is not working the way it's supposed to. It's just not fair. And this is the response. We either separate from others or from God because others and God don't perform the way we thought it should happen. Separation is one option, to be honest, with the hurt. But biblically, There is another option, and it's called lament. Lament. Dominic Gilliard, a friend of ours who spoke from this very place, wrote this in an article he wrote several years ago. Somewhere along the way, we modern Christians got lament wrong. We began thinking of it as an optional instead of a required practice of the faith. A strange word to modern ears, lamentation feels inherently ancient. It brings to mind images of an overwrought demonstration of mourning, sackcloth and ashes, wailing and gnashing of teeth, a biblical proportion. More than the mere expression of sorrow and regret, however, lamentation is a powerful act, one that the church desperately needs to reclaim. In our world of nonstop news and media cycle, lamentation is an essential and a revolutionary act. I want to tell you, lament is not only okay, lament is crucial. Sometimes tears are the only tools we possess. But the hymn doesn't stop there, right? The hymn makes an intense pivot, and it says that after all the suffering, the delusion, the deceit that was present in reality, it says this, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices. There it is. Advent 1, the thrill of hope. That's what Advent 1 is about. I know you guys know this, but there's 3 tenses to the Christian life following God and Jesus Christ. There's, first of all, the past tense, what we trust God has done, we call that faith. There's the present tense, when God embodies and makes everything possible through his love, we call that present tense. But the last one is future tense, what we believe God will do. We call that hope. The thrill of hope, the worry world rejoices. It's the thrill of hope that we have. See, hope can be lived out in the immediate situation of our life. Sometimes it does. But it is, by its very definition, something in the future. Something that we don't have yet. In theological language, it has an eschatological nature to it. Something that's out there. In theological terms, it's already not yet. We see God working. We see elements or glimpses or shinings of what God is doing in the world, but not in completion. Not complete. It's still going to happen. At times, we are privileged enough to see a present fulfillment. I've seen present fulfillments of hope. I have experienced present fulfillments of hope. But I'm going to tell you, church, and this is where this sermon gets full of tension. I don't always experience the fulfillment of hope. There are times where I've hoped, and not only did I not experience the fulfillment of that, I still haven't, and perhaps I never will in the time of I'm on the earth breathing. That's the hard part about hope, is we want it to be fulfilled in the time frame that we want, but that's not the way it works. Not all the time, at least. There is that already yet. Now, I know this has taken a long time to get here, but I'm going to get to our text now. Don't worry, I'm not going to take you past the hour. But the lectionary text is taken from the prophet Jeremiah, from the Old Testament, in chapter 33. And the first part of the chapter has everything to do with desolation. It's one of those passages where you almost don't want to read it in public because it makes you feel so uncomfortable. Here's the text. We're going to project it for you. Jeremiah 33, verses 3 through 5, and then verse 10. Here it is. Call to me, and I will answer you, and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says about the houses of the city and the royal palaces of Judah, that have been torn down to be used against the siege ramps and the sword in the fight with the Babylonians. They will be filled with the dead bodies of people I will slay in my anger and wrath. I will hide my face from the city because of its wickedness. This is what the Lord says. You say about this place, it is a desolate waste without people or animals. That, my friends, is a picture of desolation. It's a picture of desolation. There is really bad news at that time that they were experiencing. It has to be understood that the main theme of the book of Jeremiah, however, is this axiom, if you will. It's found in chapter 1, verse 10, and verse 31 and 28. It says this is the mission or the goal or the theme of the book, to uproot and tear down. But also, he was to plant and build up. To tear down, but to build up. So the story isn't complete with the desolation. There's always a consolation in Scripture. But by the way, this idea of tearing something down to build it back up, right now we're in the middle of remodeling our garage at our house. It's very early on, but our hope is to put in an apartment so Papa Keith can live with us. That's the plan. So the first step in creating this apartment at our house is to demolish the garage. The contractor is going to come in and rip everything out. That's the demolition. That's the desolation. But that desolation is happening for a reason, so that something beautiful can be erected, can be put in there so he can have a place to live with us. It really is this beautiful picture. There is a predictability to deconstruction. But like always in the Bible, there's always a mandatory reconstruction. Always. Now, the passage I just read to you is followed by another passage I'm going to call the promise of hope. And it could be translated or interpreted about Israel and Judah being returned to their motherland from Babylonian captivity. A promise also, though, is a promise of redemption related to the foretelling of Messiah. You'll see it as we read it. I'm going to read it out of a slightly different translation because I think it captures where this text is going a little bit better. But this is Jeremiah 33, verses 14 through 16. The Lord said, I made a wonderful promise to Israel and Judah, and the days are coming when I will keep it. I promise that the time will come when I will appoint a king from the family of David. A king, now listen to this, church, a king who will be honest and rule with justice. In those days, Judah will be saved, Jerusalem will have peace, and will be named the Lord gives justice. The Lord gives justice. What a promise. There's a time coming when God will appoint a king from the family of David, an honest and a just king. It must be understood that in traditional Jewish interpretation, this is an unfulfilled promise regarding Messiah. We're still waiting for Messiah. There are also others, scholars, who at least see this as a partial fulfillment of the return from the Babylonian captivity. But there is a Christian interpretation here that sees fulfillment through Jesus Christ. Again, some aspects are already fulfilled, while others await complete fulfillment in the second coming. It's a story of a promise given and a promise fulfilled. As I thought about this text this week, it placed me squarely between the tension of the reality of a world that refuses to coddle me and the wonder of hope that something real is in the future. That is a tension that if you have not made peace with in your faith, you are going to have to. It's not a Pollyannish picture. It refuses to allow me to live in this world where everything is the way I want it to be. But there is a hope. I have this right in my office. I have my desk. I'm sitting here, and right next to me, right here, is this. I'm going to project for you. This is from a French philosopher, Gabriel Marcel, hope is the memory of the future. Hope is the memory of the future, which is really a little mind-bending the way that he puts that. What does that mean to you? For me, it means that I remember what I've been promised, and that holds me in a different place. Something that we hold that is still to come. Questions like, can I be hopeful even when I don't feel it? Can I tether myself to the future wonder that God has promised, which began with Christ's life, death, and resurrection, and also the fulfillment, the healing of all things? Can I be catalyzed by the strength and resiliency of the telos of God, the fuller picture, the end point that we talk about from Revelation, end of Revelation? See, I do feel sadness. I do feel grief and desperation at times in the present tense. For me, I think millions through the centuries have faced this, but they also have a hope where they find some strange power in faith in Jesus. Sadness faced with the reality that things might not get better, but still finding hope squarely in the midst of that. One of the benefits, there's a lot of benefits, I suppose, of tackling your garage to prepare it for something else, is Robbie and I had to go through quite a few years of stuff that piled up in there. I don't know how many, but we've cleaned it out twice, or 3 times. We've been there for 24 years. So it piles stuff, we pile stuff up in there. We've gotten a car in that garage before, but we don't park cars in that garage. It's a storage unit for us. So as a result of that, we've had to clear everything out so it can be demolished, as I've mentioned. Well, the interesting thing is, one of the things that Robbie brought in and brought into my office was a box of stuff that I forget things, so I might have seen it before, but I don't think I've ever seen it before. I honestly have not seen what was in this box. And I can't it's been a lot of years since my dad passed away. Well, it's been over 20 years since he passed away. 22 years, yeah. And what was in this box was about 55 handwritten pages from my dad, talking about his life. It was like a memoir. It was stunning, and I can't go through all of it. In fact, I have this is the way it looked. There's like 55 pages of my dad chronicling his life. This one is particularly unique, though, and I'm not going to read it because I'm going to tell you if I try to read it, we're going to need triage. Because I read it, and I literally almost fell down crying. And I took it out to Robbie in the garage and said, you have to read this out loud. Will you read this for me? And she started reading it, and then she's getting ready to fall over with tears. And the reason being is there's stuff in this writing that I didn't know about my dad. My dad was kind of he was an entrepreneurial type of personality, and he started numerous businesses, and he was not successful in all of them. He went bankrupt 2 different times in my growing up years. And the interesting, by the way, this was written to his grandchildren. This last 3 pages, he wrote this to his grandkids, and they had never seen this church. I sent it to my brothers and said, have you ever seen this? No one had ever seen this. It's crazy. So he writes this to the grandchildren, his line, and he talks about some of the things that they went through, some of the hardship they went through as a result of the bankruptcies. And I'm going to tell you, church, I'm going to close this off quicker than it feels right now. But he put a firewall up between this really, really difficult hardship and me and my brothers. I can honestly tell you, I knew what was going on, but I never felt like anything was wrong. It was the weirdest thing until I read this. Where they literally had to start selling all their possessions to eat. They had to sell my mom's wedding ring to eat, to pay rent, to do all this. I mean, it got really tragic for them. And we didn't know. We just didn't know. So he goes through all the stuff that they had gone through. And he wrote this. My dad became a Christian in his 50s because we badgered him to do it. Literally, I was so on him. It was embarrassing to think how aggressive I was. But it worked. Whatever. Okay. But if you were to read this, he goes through all of this hardship, and then he says, "But I found the Lord, and I could not have done it without him." I couldn't have done it. I could not have gone through what I went through. The Lord was with me. And as I read that, I thought, my dad got some things, and you know what? The thing that we're talking about today fortified him. It allowed him to go through something that, there's one particular line in here where he says, very few people get a chance to start over, and I'm one of them. But I got old way too fast. In other words, his life didn't become this rosy little walk through life, but he did actually go through it differently. And the reason I share that with you is because that's what Advent 1 is about, to me. There's a line, and I'm going to leave you with this, by a theologian you hear quite a bit about here, but a guy named Walter Brueggemann, Old Testament scholar. And I think it's helpful for us to define hope. I'm going to project it so you can get it. But hope, on one hand, is an absurdity too embarrassing to speak about, for it flies in the face of all those claims we have been told are facts. Hope is the refusal to accept the reading of reality, which is the majority opinion, and one that does only at great political and existential risk. Now listen to this last bit here. On the other hand, hope is subversive. It limits the grandiose pretension of the present, daring to announce that the present, to which we have all made commitments, is now called into question. In other words, everything you're experiencing, everything that's going on, that's not the end of the story. Or as Bishop Tutu put it, I have read the book and I've read the end and we win. That might sound a little triumphalistic, but the point is, there's something that allowed him to move. I mean, that's a man who went through stuff in apartheid South Africa. It allowed him to live differently. Hope lives in the reality that in Jesus, the Bible makes clear, life overcomes death. And it changes everything. Could I have you stand with me? I'm not sure who's doing the benediction. Are you doing that? Before Leslie comes up and leads us in the benediction, I'm going to ask if you would sing with me a hymn. O holy night, the stars are brightly shining.